Thank you very much, Heba. Thank you for organizing this great seminar. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I know times are tough, and we really appreciate you time to join us. It's a rare opportunity. We don't get that many corporate visitors, so very grateful to the RBC, to not a first time, but a second time to come and join us. Very happy about that. RBC, Canada's largest bank. So thank you very much, Heba, for organizing this. So we'll start. We'll let the speaker speak. You can stay on mute, but then after that, we definitely want to give you some airtime. So if you can use the raise your hand feature, and then we'll answer as many of your questions as we can, and we're willing to stay afterwards as well. So thank you all for coming. And on that note, I'd like to introduce Giuliano and Thierry. Thierry, do you want to go first?
Sure. Thank you, Bruno, and thank you, Heba. So, hi, everyone. My name is Thierry Nguyen. I'm, as Heba mentioned, I'm a Marianopolis alumni. I was in your seat. I graduated from Marianopolis back in 2004. We were at the previous campus, close to Côte des Neiges, and I have very fond memories of my time there. 2 fantastic years. I was part of the basketball team, so played with the Blue Devils and had a great time. There. I started off in sciences. Wasn't really for me. I didn't do too well in my chemistry class. So switched over to commerce, which was more suited with my the way my brain worked. So had a great time. Then I went to McGill, where I did my Bachelor's of Commerce degree, and after 3 years joined RBC. So I've been at RBC now for coming on 14 years. I'm in the capital markets division of RBC, and more specifically within capital markets in the investment banking group. And so I'm sure we'll spend a lot more time after this to talk to you about the different facets of the bank and different groups. But in a nutshell, within capital markets and within investment banking more specifically, our task is to work with large cap clients, large corporations, large institutional funds, private equity firms, and really work with them around strategic advisory. So that encompasses mergers and acquisitions. So if you read newspapers like the Wall Street Journal and the Financial Times, looking at companies buying and selling each other. So that's our bread and butter. That's what we do, and help companies access the capital markets. So if you follow the stock market or you look at IPOs, teams like ourselves will help companies achieve those types of transactions. What we do in a nutshell. It's really a pleasure here to be able to have the opportunity to speak to you all. I wish we could be in person and meet some of you and shake hands, but for now, happy we can do this in a virtual setting, and super excited to spend the next hour with you all. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Thierry. Giulio?
Thank you, Heba. Thank you, everyone, for having me as well. Giulio Iaconi, Associate Director of Risk Management at RBC. I've been at RBC for the last 7 or so years. Graduate of Marianopolis College, 2002. Did the health sciences program for those 2 years there, and really, really enjoyed it. Got to meet a lot of great people there, and learned a lot about myself and a lot of skills I gained that applied later on in life as well. Some of which we'll touch upon later. After which I went to McGill for 3 years. I did a Bachelor's of Science, and my studies didn't end there. I did my MBA after that at Concordia, and my CA while working at KPMG for 7 years prior to arriving at the bank for the last 7 years. My job entails essentially handling smaller sized businesses, the majority of which are not really public, but mostly commercial clients, locally owned businesses. At the end of the day, my role in the operations of the bank is to ensure that our credit landscape is kept in check, so that we maintain adequate financing for these clients. to maintain their objectives. So whether it be financing a building, making sure their business is operating day to day properly. And we can go into further details as well on that later on if you have any questions. Thank you very much for everyone for having me, and looking forward to speaking to you all. Despite the fact that we're in a virtual setting, it'd be great to exchange with you all at some point, even in person. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you both. I didn't know that you were both coming from a science. I come from a science also in CEGEP. So it's great. And it's great for you guys to have an idea of
just
like
for
what
one
the
semester
bank
for me.
entitled. One semester. I actually completed it. So without further ado, guys, we have two awesome RBCers here with us today. So think about your questions. Think about, what you want to ask them. You're with them here for the next at least half an hour to 45 minutes. So I'd like to ask you, Thierry and Giulio, maybe a question around what made you join the banking industry and what attracted you to career in the banking. Thank you for providing us a little bit of a background of what you do already. I'll leave those questions for the students to ask you more about it. But my question to you is what made you choose the banking industry?
Yeah, maybe I'll start. Thanks for that question, Hebot. So it's a good question. And as I said, after Marianopolis, I went to McGill. I did a Bachelor of Commerce. I specialized in finance and entrepreneurship. And I remember in an entrepreneurship class, we had a final project where we had to think about our career choices and kind of be systematic in trying to grade them and think through, whether it's applicable to us. And so I picked out, finance. I picked out going into law. I picked out entrepreneurship. I thought about being a beach bum for a while in Hawaii. So I kind of rated all these different alternatives, try to be, and as you can imagine, they all have their pros and cons. And for me, what drove me into finance and more specifically into investment banking, one, as you go up into university, it's something that's quite popular or talked about between your alumni. So I had friends who were older than me who had started into the job, and I had a chance to learn about it from a direct experience or from direct feedback. And what really attracted me in this field in particular is that it's really it's high impact work. You work in teams. It's a transactional job, and so in investment banking specifically, we're in the client advisory business, and we're working with quite sophisticated clients, working with CEOs, with board of directors, with CFOs on transactions that are quite important for them and their growth initiatives. And so the type of environment you're in, you're working with really smart people, both your colleagues and your clients. You're exposed to extremely interesting projects, whether it's raising capital in interesting ways or looking at different combinations of businesses. And so it was, frankly, a really fascinating environment to be a part of. And so that's what drove me to apply to the job. It's a pretty it's not for everyone. It's a relatively stressful environment. It's a deal-based environment, and it's a client-based environment. And so there's high demands and tight timelines. And so it's not for everyone, but for the people who strive in that kind of world, it's really rich, and it's been a great time for me.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing, Thierry. Giulio, you had a bit of time to think about it.
Thank you, Heba. So for me, what drew me to RBC, there's a variety of different factors, but really in terms of presence and in terms of helping people achieve their goals, the bank has always been there for me and has always been an attractive location and an attractive employer for me as well. And from the start of my career, they had either been involved in either supporting me as a student, whether it be through different ways of letting me pay through school, and you gain access to more and more people as time goes on, and as you develop with this institution, you realize that the quality of the people that you would be working with is also very, very high caliber. And so that for me was what attracted me to the bank, the opportunity to work with extremely talented individuals, working at the same time, working on really interesting transactions on my end. I've had a variety of different roles, whether it be client-facing, analytical, what I would call almost a gatekeeper role now. We get to deal with a lot of complex transactions, very local oriented, but some of them are multinational at the same time. And at the end of the day, our end customer is mom and pop shops, depending on the size. Again, local businesses, people that are just like me and you that need help for their growth opportunities, for their expansions. And at the end of the day, these people have employees that all have families as well. So in a sense, giving back to the community, having an impact, like Thierry said, and that was pretty important to me. But at the same time, keeping the big picture as well in place, remembering what they had done for me over time in my lifetime, and giving back in different ways in my current role, for instance.
So thank you so much for sharing. I'd like to ask you this question. If you go back in time, let's say we have a time machine and you go back in time and you had one advice to give yourself, your 18-year-old self, what would it be? Why? And do you think yourself, your 18-year-old self, would listen to that advice?
That's a great question. I think the way I would, there's a bunch of advice that we could give each other, but I think one important advice at your stage in your life and your education, and it applies for the rest of your life, but I think it's enjoy the journey. Enjoy the journey and the steps along the way, because, and I say that, we attract some very bright students that come join the firm, and sometimes I see some CVs that are so, for a 20-year-old or a 21-year-old, there's so much experience in terms of top GPA, 3 different internships before even applying for a summer internship 2 years before they graduate, and so there's so much work that's been done and through in terms of getting exactly to the job they want to be. But I think enjoying their journey is super important, because that's at the end of the day that's what it's all about. Because sometimes we've seen people work so hard to get their quote unquote dream job, and then they get in and for whatever reason doesn't live up to what they thought it would be, or once that goal is accomplished, they're like, well, what's my next goal? And so I just say, have fun, enjoy it for sure, focus on your studies and focus on getting good grades and have goals. It's important to have goals, but it's also important to enjoy the ride. So when we look at recruitment and we recruit and we look at the type of profile that we seek out in candidates, when you're at that point, and ready to start looking for jobs, of course we look at CVs, of course we look at GPAs, of course we look at prior work experience. It's all very important, but we also try to dig deeper and peel the onion in terms of what's this person all about? What kind of person are we speaking to here? And is this a person that embodies the values and the characteristics of someone we want on our team? And so I think, as we said, we're in the advisory business at the end of the day, and so we are in the people business. And a lot of our work is analytical, and there's math involved and there's numbers involved. It is a bank after all, but a lot of it too is relationships, building long-term trusted relationships. And so we want to have people who have interesting backgrounds and have interesting hobbies and have interesting points of view. So diversity is super important. And I think one of the advice that I'd like you all to think about is make sure you focus on academics, super important, but focus on being a complete person and a person that's that's gonna thrive in whichever field you end up choosing to pursue.
Thank you, Thierry. Very important. It's true. You have to enjoy the journey in order for you to enjoy the results at the end. Thank you so much for sharing that. How about Giulio?
Well, Thierry hit the nail on the head on a lot of things I was going to say, but I'll say this: if I were to go back and tell my 18-year-old self what to do, or just tell him something, the importance of relationships can't be understated, and it's never too early to start networking and to getting to know people. And when I say networking, I don't just mean trying to connect with people online and in a job or a position that you're looking at potentially down the line. Connect with everybody and anybody that you find interesting, and maybe even some that you don't think are interesting. And at the end of the day, the end focus is not just accumulating people in a Rolodex. It's what you can do for that person and what that person can do for you down the line. And you'll never realize the importance of that, making relationships and making links with people over time. The value, again, going back to what Thierry said, in a bank is not the numbers, the loans, and the math that goes behind everything we do, but it's in the people that I both represent the bank and the people we represent as clients and those that we support in our communities. At the end of the day, if we can establish good relationships with these people, there's no sticking points for those people to go and switch banks and switch institutions. So establishing relationships and finding commonalities with other people, even if it seems mundane and if it seems like it won't create value for you in today's day, in today's time, it may down the line serve to help you, or at the very least teach you something that you'll end up using later on in life. And so would I listen to myself? Well, at 18, I wasn't super mature, but at the end of the day, I probably listen to some degree and say, hey, maybe I'll listen to this guy and I'll try to make as many friends as possible. And it's not just a question of making friends. It's connect with as many people as possible. You never know what you'll be able to gain from them. And there's no harm in being nice at the end of the day.
I completely agree with you, Giulio. Quality networking isn't just about who you know, but who knows you actually at the end of the day. So thank you so much for sharing. I think I want the students now, I want to give it to Bruno, and I'd love to hear from students what you guys have questions for us. So maybe we can open up the lines, and one by one, I'll leave that to Bruno to manage and to call your name, and we'd love to hear your voice and ask your question.
Thank you, Heba.
So Bruno.
Thank you.
Passing the ball to you.
Yes, thank you. Received. Okay, guys, we have an opportunity. The floor is ours. So instead of listening to one of your teachers, you have a chance to talk to some real life executives. Who wants to go first?
The first student question was regarding the lifespan of an investment banker. How long does an investment banker work for average on a firm like RBC? For example, do they work 5 years and they quit, or do they work 6 years and they quit? How taxing is the job, and how long does a person stay in a job like investment banking?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. So how it works in terms of the recruitment, there's two ways generally to get in terms of the structure. There's the analyst program, which is new undergraduates, and there's associates who are MBA students who join the level after. And so I'd say investment banking, you should think of it as a career. Some people think of it as a job, and as I mentioned, it's a demanding environment. And so the early years can be tough in terms of the workload, and we can talk a bit more about that after. But really, it's a career. Like I said, I've been here for 14 years now. One of my colleagues joined in '98, so he's been there for 22, 23 years. Started as an analyst, and so you can absolutely have a career. Our current CEO of RBC Capital Markets also started as an analyst in investment banking and worked his way up the ranks and worked in different groups within capital markets, and now is the CEO of RBC Capital Markets globally. And so there's definitely a career path as opposed to saying this is a 2-year, 3-year job. The contract when you join is a 2-year contract. And for the analysts that perform well, there's a fit, on both sides. Then there would typically be a 3rd year of an analyst, and then you get promoted to associate, then to vice president, director, managing director, and so on and so forth. That being said, some people decide that after a year, 2 years, it was a great experience, but it's not for them. So there's a natural attrition of people that join the job and decide to pursue other opportunities. Either it's going back to school and to do an MBA, either it's to join a client and work on the corporate development team at a client, either it's changing over to the buy side and working in private equity. So it opens a ton of doors. And so when you look at the alumni network of RBC or different investment banks, you have so many different profiles. I know ex-bankers who are now doctors, lawyers, tech investors, you name it. And so I think the message is, 1, it can absolutely be a career and a very fulfilling career. And 2, it can also open a lot of doors by teaching you some great skills that you can apply in other fields.
The next student question was regarding the number of work hours per week of a new associate in investment banking.
150. No, it depends. It depends. And so the early years, and look, it's quite, I'm a bit flippant and I was joking a little bit, it's a stigma of the job that people sometimes get discouraged about. And so it's something that we take very seriously, and in all seriousness, work-life balance is extremely important and is a focus from the top down, from the top of the organization, from the very senior leadership all the way to the VPs and associates who are managing the day-to-day work of the analyst. And so I'm not going to hide it. It is it's a demanding job. It's not a 9-to-5 job by any means of the imagination. It's a client service job that you work on important transactions. And so by nature of these transactions, there's tight deadlines and, sometimes work has to be done. Can there be weeks that you work 80 plus hours? It could happen. Does that happen on a regular basis? No, I don't think so. And so we try to one, hire appropriately, to have teams that are well staffed, to be able to share the workload, if you will. And also, we've made a lot of investments in technology now, which I think, versus the time I started as an analyst, it really revolutionizes the way you can manage your work-life balance. And so things like having a functional VPN to be able to work from home makes a huge difference. Because I remember, back in my day when I was working on the weekend, for example, I couldn't just turn on my laptop and work from the house. I had to go into the office and be by the desk for comments to come in and wait for faxes to come in. It's almost like that was just kind of the reality of waiting for things to happen. So now with technology, I think we can be a lot smarter in the way we work. But yeah, so it's a demanding job. I think a lot of different jobs that attract a certain personality. I speak to some of my friends who are doctors, who work in the ER. They're working harder hours than I am. And so if you want to be a tech entrepreneur and start your own business and launch the new app that's gonna be a global success, trust me, you're putting some pretty serious hours. And so most jobs that have high reward, you need to put in the work. That being said, we want to make sure we take care of our team and support them, and we don't want anybody to burn out either. So it's a balance, but it's a reality of the job.
The next student question was regarding stereotyping in investment banking. Are there any stereotypes in investment banking, or are there any shared characteristics among investment bankers?
Yeah, super interesting. I think for us, yes, there are certain characteristics of people that work in banking or other jobs. So I think I mentioned, you need to be a people person. When you start off, it's very analytical, but the more you progress, you become a relationship manager. So you need to be comfortable dealing with people. It is people who are rigorous in terms of thinking through different problems and solving problems. I think it's people who are creative and entrepreneurial, because at the end of the day, you're in charge of building your client base and reaching out to folks. And so it's not a job where you can just sit in your corner all day. You need to go out there and build relationships. So I think there's certainly a lot of features or characteristics or personality traits that you'll find across our colleagues or across the group. That being said, we're super focused on diversity. We recognize across our industry and in our firm, there's a gap in diversity. And so we're better than some, but there's still a lot of work to be done. And so it's a big focus of the bank, across the bank, including in capital markets, to increase our diversity and look at people from different backgrounds. And so what I'd say is there's not one path to get into this field. There's many different paths. We have people that have engineering backgrounds, people that have arts backgrounds, people that have accounting backgrounds. And so there's many ways to come in. And so it goes back to my original comment where really we're looking for well-rounded people. And so of course grades come into play, and we want to show that you're responsible, you're ambitious, you're reliable, you understand numbers. And on the end of the day, we need to run numbers, so you need to understand math, but it's not rocket science either. And so I think personality matters a bunch in this field.
The next student question was regarding what kind of skill is important in investment banking, and how can a student develop that skill?
Yeah, I think the early years, your analytical skills are going to be important. So in the first part of the job, the role of the analyst is to do the fundamental analysis that's required for the rest of the team to be able to reflect on the numbers. What do the numbers tell us, and be able to provide insightful recommendations and advice to our clients. And so the job initially, I think the skills is you need to be very detail oriented. You need to have an interest in finance. You need to have an interest in the capital markets. You should care about what's happening in the markets and what companies are doing, how companies are thinking about their strategies and their corporate initiatives. So I think that's hugely important. And so during the interview process, we typically have two stages, if you will. There's one is the fit. So all the things I talked about earlier in terms of the personality, the interest, what kind of feedback do we get from this person? That's hugely important. But the first bucket, and the second bucket, okay, if this person is fit and it's a great person we want to have in our team in terms of the personality, then can they actually do the job? And so the second part is more technical questions. And so questions like, how do you value a company? And so you'll learn this, I'm sure, if you decide to go down the path, there's looking at discounted cash flow analyses, looking at ways that you can figure out what's the intrinsic value of a business, so that when you're working with your client that says, I want to buy company A, what's it worth? You can do some real work to have a view in terms of what your client should be paying for this enterprise. So there's clearly a very analytical portion of the job, and then the other one, it's like I said, just personality.
Thank you, Thierry. We have time for a few more questions.
Bruno, I may have one if I have a chance to ask.
Of course.
All right. Hello, everybody. I'm Norma Vitaleon, and I am the program coordinator. So thank you to our guests for being here today. This has been great. My question has to do with basically the previous questions too, in the sense that in another life, I also worked at banking at a central bank in Mexico. And I do remember the very, very long hours back then. I also remember, like Mexico in the 1990s, there were specific constraints on women, like additional stereotypes that you had to deal with, and I think that things have changed a lot. But when it comes to female workers, the balance between work and family is always a concern. And I am happy to see that we have at Marianopolis a large number of very strong students, that across all the spectrum. And I'm wondering, how does the bank these days allows for, to retain talent by, supporting all of these different these diversities. So I don't know if you have anything to say about that.
I can answer part and parcel. I mean, it's a great question, and it's probably been a great focus of the bank for the last decade or so, at the very least. We recognize that there's a gap in gender equality across the board in the workforce, and even more so in banking for that matter. But what we have noted, especially in personal and commercial banking, and I think capital markets as well, correct me if I'm wrong, Thierry, there has been a shift to better the work-life balance element, especially for women coming into the workforce. I mean, from where I stand as you speak, the opportunities for roles in executive management, in credit roles, in sales roles at the bank, especially in our facet of the line of the business, there's been a focus. In fact, if anything, we've got some groups that are majority taken up by women in those roles. At the end of the day, the opportunities will be equal, and we're trying to rebalance ourselves, meaning in a sense that any new opportunities for leadership, well, chances are, if you've got equal qualifications, not to say that women will be picked over men, but in most cases, we will favor the promotion of a woman over a man, in a sense of equalizing that landscape and supporting the equalization of that landscape across our leadership groups. I don't know if that answers to some degree the question. There's a lot of support programs that Heba could probably provide additional information on, but the bank has been very, very open and honest about it, and has made really great strides over time in the last decade, at the very least.
Thank you, Giulio.
Yeah, I just want to add to that because it's a very important question. So thank you for raising it. And so I think Giulio made some great comments, and I just add on to that. We are working through some very specific initiatives to retain, but also to attract, quite frankly, women into the field, because it starts at the funnel, and just from statistically, when we put out a posting for a new job opportunity in banking, maybe 3/4 or 80% will be male applicants. That's just the reality of the funnel. And so we've questioned ourselves a lot about, why that's the case. And so I think information sessions such as this one is very important to explain to you all from a young age, or from early on in your careers or education, about the job, such that you can do your own research and hopefully find it interesting and are interested to apply. And so we have several initiatives to increase our recruitment of women into the workforce. And so we've started some mentorship programs for first-year university women to pair them with someone within the bank, within capital markets. And so I was a mentor to an exceptional young lady from BC and helped her understand what the job entails. And so there's a lot of initiatives I'd say to make everyone realize, but women in particular, why this job could be interesting for them to pursue. Because we see in law and in accounting, there's a lot more diversity, but it's something I think that we can do better. And then in terms of retention too, there's you're all too young to be thinking about this, but families happen, and it's both parents are responsible for raising a family, but the woman obviously needs some time to. Sometimes it's more difficult in the early years, and so there's programs for return to work or return to capital markets. So for certain women who decide to take some time off after having a child, once that child is older, then to return to the workforce. And so there's return to capital markets program, which have been very successful. And so some of the very senior leaders in the firm now were part of these programs. And so I think we've said enough, but all to say that it's a hugely important focused area and endeavor, and we certainly hope that some of you here will be encouraged to look into this as a career choice. And if you want to reach out to me separately afterwards to talk about it, I'm more than happy to spend some time.
Thank you, Giulio.
What was your experience and job before you came to RBC? What jobs did you take, and which ones helped you to get where you are today, and whether you would recommend those jobs?
I'll take the first stab at this. So prior to doing my MBA, I had jobs at CNR Corporation, believe it or not, which is now a defunct company, going to work with our legal team and getting to know a little bit of what happened there during if you can look it up, actually, and there was a bit of a scandal that went on there, and I was my first summer job essentially learning about legal ramifications of scandals and how they can impact you. I worked at Jean Coutu for 5 years and learned about client service, and there's no other simplistic way to put it, but getting to know people that you see on a regular basis and establishing a level of trust with them. You don't realize it when you're going through it, but these are transferable skills that you gain over time. And while obviously I gained a lot of experience in accounting prior to coming to the bank, working with KPMG in a client-facing role as well, you can never downplay the employment that you might seek at any age, and what impact it might have in your career. I look at a lot of our successful account managers and representatives at the bank now. A lot of them started at McDonald's, looking at high stress situations, problem solving, again, client facing, and dealing with customers that want to be served in like 10 seconds. Things that seem mundane when you think about it, but at the end of the day may end up serving you and better you for the long term. So that's my take on that. Never look back and say, I can't believe I did that prior to taking on a role. Don't be shy to ask. But believe it or not, we're all in this for a reason, and you never really start low enough to believe that you can get to a certain level later on in life.
Why did you choose RBC? Is it just because it's the largest bank in Canada, or are there any other benefits?
Yeah, maybe I'll start. Thanks for that. It's a nice way to allow myself and Giulio to give the RBC commercial without forcing it down your neck. So I appreciate the question. It's a good segue for us to be able to talk about how great the bank is. For me, it happened a bit by luck, quite frankly. And so when we talked about, networking or friendships, I was fortunate that I actually graduated from McGill without a job out of graduation. And so I decided to go traveling for a couple of months. I went for 3 months around Southeast Asia and just, backpacked around. And then I got an email from a friend of mine who had graduated a year before and was working at RBC in Montreal, and said, I'm transferring to Toronto. There's an opening. It's a bit of a rush. We need to find a seat ASAP. So are you interested? And so I said, sure. And I interviewed via Skype at the time for some internet cafe in Vietnam and then in Phuket, and I got the job. So that's kind of how I got into it. So little did I know that, getting into the job, it would end up being, a 14-year career or a place I'd be for such a long time. But I think I'm very fortunate that I got that phone call, and very fortunate that I landed where I am, because it's a phenomenal bank. It's a phenomenal team. It's really a great place to work. And so within capital markets, or, the bank, we are the biggest bank in Canada. So that's just kind of a fact. And so we're the market leader. And then within capital markets specifically, we also are the market leader in Canada. And we're the only bank in Canada that truly has a global presence. And so something that the bank within capital markets decided to do when I joined, actually, or around when I joined back in 2007, if you take out the history books, that was the last. We're living through the current crisis, the pandemic, but that was the last financial crisis back in 08, 09. And so a lot of banks and a lot of very established investment banks had too much leverage, had exposure to too much risky assets, and really had trouble with their liquidity. And so that was a period where RBC, who was safer and still had a good credit quality, we really stepped up and took advantage of that turbulence in the market to aggressively expand our operations internationally. So principally in the US. So we make a big push to hire top-rated bankers and service clients when our competitors couldn't. And so today, while you think of RBC as a Canadian bank, which we are, we're the largest bank in Canada, within capital markets, our business down south in the US is multiple times bigger than our business in Canada. And so we have probably 5 or 10 times more bankers in New York than we do in Toronto, and serve, the gamut of services within capital markets and investment banking with clients in the US, clients in London, clients in Sydney, clients in San Francisco. And so we really have a global coverage strategy, and that's what we call our group, global investment banking. And so it's been great just to be part of that success, to be part of that growth. And it's been really stimulating. So, I guess, why did I choose RBC? I didn't really choose RBC. I just kind of fell into it. But why did I stay? It's because it's been a great ride. I work with amazing people, and the bank itself is doing fantastic, and lives the values that are important to me. So it's a good fit.
Since you mentioned that RBC is international, what is the difference between working as an investment banker in the States and in Canada?
It's a good question. I think it's very similar. It's very similar. I mean, the cost of your apartment's more expensive in New York than it is in Montreal. So I guess that's one difference. But look, all things on all seriousness. I mean, the job itself is very similar, and the reality of our job is that we often work in teams. And so any client that that I cover or project that I work on, it's not just Montreal, working with my Montreal colleagues. I'm working with my Toronto colleagues. I'm working with my New York colleagues, people from London, depending on the file. And so it's very much a collaborative effort across our offices. Most of our clients have global ambitions. They want to look at acquisitions outside of their backyard. You may have seen last week or a couple of weeks ago, there was a lot of press around Couche-Tard, which is a homegrown, giant company that it leaked. Unfortunately, in merger acquisitions, you can have leaks. And so it leaked before they were ready to announce the deal that they were looking to acquire Carrefour, which is a $20 billion grocery company based in France and with operations globally. So that was a hugely transformational acquisition. They would double the size of their business. They would change into a new business line, going from convenience stores to grocery. And that's the type of moves that some of our clients are looking to do. So cross-border M&A, global M&A, across geographies, across different sectors. And so we work very much in collaboration, irrespective of where you work. I'd say, by virtue of some of the clients in different regions, the type of clients you cover will be different. And so, for example, in Montreal, our mandate is to cover Quebec-based clients. And so Quebec is a pretty diversified economy. And so my client base varies from companies in the consumer space. I mentioned Couche-Tard, companies in renewable energy like Hydro-Quebec and Boralex, companies in transportation like Air Canada, like Transport. So there's a very wide range of industries you cover. If you go into an office like New York or London or Toronto, they're bigger offices, and so usually the coverage model is more specific. So instead of having a diversified or generalist coverage, you will do a specific industry. And so you'll be a banker that will do only fintech, or a banker that will do only healthcare or only industrials, and so on and so forth. And so the coverage approach is different, but the job itself is very similar.
Thank you, Thierry. Do we have maybe one final question?
Can you tell me how the salary works?
Now we've got someone asking the real question.
Yes.
Yeah, so I won't give you numbers, but it's construct. It's that's how it works. There's usually there's a base salary, and there's an annual bonus, which is a material part of the overall compensation. And so it depends on the performance of the bank, depends on the performance of the group. As you get more senior, it depends on your individual performance in terms of the revenues you generated. For analysts and associates, it's less, you're not expected to bring in business, so it's more of your performance overall. But the compensation structure is a base salary and a bonus.
Thierry, is the bonus 10% of base, 20% of base?
It varies. It varies. It's not 10%. Bonuses, depending on the level you are at in the firm, it can vary from 80% of base to 500% of base. So
Okay.
The bonus can be quite variable.
Okay.
We're a competitive employer in terms of salaries, and depending on which group you go into different functions, there's different salary grades, but I'm not going to hide it. Yeah, it's an attractive part of the job as well. It's, we're well compensated.
Thank you very much, Thierry. I think on that note, it's a good way to terminate our session. I want to thank you all.
Yeah, and then we ended with a real money question. That's good.
Yeah.
We wrap it up.
Right to that. Yes.
I want to know if we wasted your time or not.
Thank you very much, Giulio. Thank you, Thierry. I know you're very busy executives. Thierry, you mentioned how many hours you work, so it's a privilege to have you here today. Thank you all the students who were professional, had the cameras on, and asked good questions and paid attention. That's the reason guest speakers come to Marianopolis. They're very busy. They don't have to come see us. So they come because they know that we have professional students. That's the reason we're able to attract top-notch speakers who come here on a volunteer basis to talk to us. They don't have to. So Giulio and Thierry, thank you so much for coming today. Very gracious of you. Thank you, and thank you to everyone for your professionalism.
Thank you everyone for tuning in to listen. I hope you enjoy listening to this episode as much as we did during the interview. Of course, a final big thank you for all the RBC panelists, Mr. Giulio Iaconi as well as Mr. Thierry Nguyen. Another thank you to Professor Bruno Delorme and Ms. Heba Alicia for organizing this talk.
If you liked this episode, learned something, or just want to help out a bunch of students, please leave a review, write a comment, and share this on social media. If you are listening to this on YouTube, please subscribe and write to us in the comments. The Marianopolis Addendum Podcast is actively seeking local sponsors here in Montreal, so if you are interested, please contact us at the email linked in the description. All the profit generated by this podcast will go back to fund our club's activity. If we have any surplus, they will be donated at the end of every month to a local charity.
This episode was edited by Henry.
We look forward to seeing you at our next broadcast. Cheers!